Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I'm wicked excited to be here with you today and talk to you about what's been on my mind and in my heart. So let's just start with a little story time, shall we? A little adult story time. Okay, so you know how it is when you're driving in your car and somebody cuts you off? Or, almost backs into you in the parking lot, or they're just doing something that you don't like. Okay. Let's just start there. I know, definitely, man, you know what I'm talking about. So here's the deal. Somebody cut me off the other day while I was driving. Was it intentional? Was it a mistake? Who knows? I don't know. But here's something that I've done. I've kind of trained myself. I've trained my mind to after, of course, now we're all human, right? So I'll oftentimes, especially if somebody cuts you off in a dangerous way or does something and you're like, Jesus Christ, and you get the bejesus scared out of you or whatever, right? So of course you might have an immediate reaction. Doesn't mean you always say something or do something, but your body and your brain will usually have an immediate response. But once that happens, or even if that does or doesn't happen, what I have trained myself to do, because it's really easy to be like, what are you, a fucking idiot? Like, oh my God, like, use your blinkah. Like, hey, look at, I may not have thought in my head, hey, fuck face, right? Oh God. Please forgive me. Okay, but here's the thing. Once that momentary, because it's a nervous system reaction, right? You blurt something out or whatever, not to them, just like to yourself inside your car. I'm not flipping the bird, like those days are over. I don't do that craziness anymore. But I will say this, okay? I'm getting to my point. Stay with me. Okay, I have trained my mind to think and to consider this, that I have no idea what this person's day has been like so far. Maybe they got bad news. Maybe something happened. Maybe they're in a rush because somebody's at the hospital. Wife is in labor. Who knows what's going on, right? So number one, I try to remind myself I have no idea what their day has been like so far, and I definitely have no idea what their life has been like so far. And knowing what I know through, again, through my own work on myself, through reading a lot of books, through being curious, working with clients, all of it. The thing that I know is we are all not just only humans. We also have nervous systems. We also have brains that are releasing chemicals. We have reactions. People are like just out in life getting hammered a lot of the time. So one of the reasons why I do that, though, is so that I can kind of stir up some empathy in myself, some compassion in myself, to kind of lean in with a little more curiosity instead of contempt and judgment, right? So I've kind of trained my mind to be thinking about, like, I have no idea what has been going on in somebody's day or somebody's life. And when I was thinking about that, like, I don't have any clue what this person has been through or is going through, etc. It got me to thinking about that famous quote. We have all heard this quote in some shape, way, or form. It often gets attributed to all kinds of people who really weren't probably the ones who said it. But this is the quote we often hear, right? Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind always. Okay? Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind always. I've seen it attributed to Robin Williams, the actor, a lot, which, yeah, whatever, that's fine. I've heard it attributed to a bunch of people, but you know me, I'm wicked curious. So, of course, I had to look it up. I had to look it up. And this is what I discovered, you guys. And it makes sense. It's all going to make sense as to what this episode is about. So buckle up for safety and stay with me. Okay. So when I look it up, the original source of the quote is by a Scottish author and theologian. His name is, so the quote is by Ian McLaren. That's where I should start. And that is the pen name of a Scottish author and theologian named Reverend John Watson. So I guess this message first appeared in like 1897. It was a Christmas message that he wrote in the British Weekly. And what the quote actually said back in the day was this: be pitiful, for every man is fighting a hard battle. Now, pitiful back then, it's intended to mean be compassionate, be empathetic towards other people, be empathetic towards. And he says, every man is fighting a hard battle. So be pitiful, right? That's where the be kind piece came from in the more modern version of it, right? But be compassionate or empathetic towards others and their hidden struggles. And when I started to think about that, right, these hidden struggles, this fight that's this battle that everybody is fighting. So then I started to think about that. So I started to break it down. So right now you're just kind of getting like a little glimpse, a little behind the scenes sneaky peeky, a little sneak peek at how my brain works, right? So I wrote this all down so that I could share it with you. I like tried to break it down into different parts. Okay, so I started to think about this quote now, right? Everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle you know nothing about. Be kind always, right? Or the original, be pitiful, for every man is fighting a hard battle. So I break this down, and the first thing we hear is every man. Every man. So AKA every single person is fighting a hard battle. So we may not know what the battle is, right? We're all going through some shit. Let's just put it that way. This being human, this whole being human experience. Yes, yes, there are some amazing and beautiful and incredible parts, but man, a lot of it is hard. So we're all going through some shit, and whatever our personalized, customized, shit might be, whatever the personal thing is, that the stuff that everybody's going through. We're all going through it. Okay. Check. Got it. Okay. I'm breaking down this quote. Okay. So we all got some shit going on, right? Some battle that we're fighting. Okay. And then this is the part that really, though, caught my eye and my ear from this quote. This part, the whole quote, we know nothing about. The whole we know nothing about it part. Because then I had to ask myself, like, okay, interesting. So why don't we know about it? Because if everybody's going through it, everybody's going through something, why don't we know about it? Now, sometimes, caveat, we might know about it because somebody is posting like hashtag vulnerable post. And they're just airing it all. They're just airing it all on social media, right? So sometimes we do know about it, but a lot of times we do not know about it. And I'm thinking to myself, why don't we know about it? And when I started to think about it, like, why don't we know about it? Then the first thing that popped into my head was the movie Fight Club. And that famous line, right? The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. First rule. And then the second rule of Fight Club, you do not talk about Fight Club. And I'm like, oh my God. And as I'm thinking about that, I'm like, okay, it's like in my brain, like the Jenga pieces, like chunk, 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 right? Or what is it? Connect four, the Connect Four pieces. When you would do like connect the numbers, you would draw the numbers, connect the dots when we were little kids. So it's all starting to like chink, chink, chink in my head, right? So this is when so I think about the movie, right? The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. And then it also got me to think about the book that I'm writing, my memoir. Some of you know that I'm a writer. I've been working on this book. And I originally had a chapter that I titled, and this is when the silence begins. This is when the silence begins. But then I realized that I took that title down because the silence was kind of always there. And that's like a running theme that I see in a lot of New England kids, right? Definitely a lot of masshole kids. That's the one, group of people I can really speak to with some authority. But, you know, the silence is often there. And in fact, I just got a message from a family member, a much younger family member on the step side of my family, asking me if I can enlighten him about some shit in my family because nobody talks about it. There's no answers to things. And I was like, kid, get in line, right? That's why I'm writing a book. I started laughing. Okay, but here's my point. So we're all in our own personal fight club. That's the thing. We're like all in our own personal fight club. And you don't realize that you're in your own personal fight club because of the number one rule of Fight Club, which is we don't talk about Fight Club. So we're all totally unaware of what everybody around us is going through because we don't talk about jack shit around here, right? I mean, that's been one of my things just as a person, as a coach, and as a mentor, is that people end up usually sharing with me things that they don't tell anybody else. Like I hear all kinds of things, their deepest dreams, their desires, their fears, what's going on, like in their lives. Like I often end up hearing a lot about it. And but in order for that to happen, there has to be like a safe place for like for that kind of stuff to go on usually. So when I'm thinking about this, so if you're in your own personal fight club and I'm in my own personal fight club and we don't talk about fight club, we're all just kind of walking around like bumping into shit, like cutting people off on the highway and in traffic because we are unawares, as I jokingly like to say, we are unawares. And we're totally unaware of what everyone is going through around us because nobody's talking about it. So then I asked myself, well, why don't we talk about these things? So I just know that for especially a lot of kids growing up that I grew up with, how things were in their house might have been different in my house. A lot of people like you don't air, your parents, your grandparents, that generation was you don't air your dirty laundry outside of this house. We don't talk about what goes on inside of this house, outside of this house. This is how so much dysfunction and generational trauma and physical, mental, verbal, sexual abuse goes undetected or unknown about because people didn't talk about shit, right? That is classic suck it up and stuff it down, as I've coined that term, right? Suck it up and stuff it down behavior. So you might have grown up in a house where you weren't allowed to talk about those things. And it was like this kind of code where we don't talk about stuff. Sometimes we don't talk about things and what we're going through because we don't want to be a burden to other people. And we feel like other people are so busy, they got a lot on their plate, nobody has any time. I don't want to like trauma, some people call it trauma dumping, right? Like I don't want to just like dump all my stuff onto them. And sometimes it's about how we're perceived, right? Like people are afraid to be perceived as weak, like this thing is weighing heavy on me and I need help and I don't want to be perceived a certain way. I mean, there's 1,000 reasons why we don't talk about stuff. We have shame, we're embarrassed, we feel guilty, we don't want to be judged. I mean, on and on and on. You can just fill in your own personal reason maybe why you don't talk about things. So what happens though is when we don't talk about things and we all don't know that we're all in our own personal friggin' fight clubs, what ends up happening is we often feel like we're the only ones going through the slog, right? We're the only ones going who are like struggling or suffering. And James Baldwin has a really beautiful quote. I wish I had written it down, but I'm going to paraphrase if I can off the top of my head and apologize in advance if I'm kind of getting the heartbeat of this wrong. But it's kind of like he says, when you read books, you start to realize that you're not the only one who is going through this particular struggle, or that you are not the only one that is suffering. In fact, everybody is suffering in some way. I was going to look up the quote, but I forgot to do it before I hit record. So here we are. But the thing is like we can end up feeling like we're the only ones experiencing this situation or this pain or this loss or this grief, because we don't talk about shit with each other. And it might lead us to also believe that we're the only ones going through it, which means that everyone else isn't going through it because we have this fantasy or this idea that somehow miraculously they're the ones that just always have their shit together. And a lot of us do have our shit together, but life is happening all the time to everybody. You know what I mean? So a lot of times it feels like, oh, everybody but me has their shit together or whatever, which only feels more isolating. And then we're like, well, and I'm just showing you how the brain can work, right? For some people, it can feel like, well, if they do have it all together and they still did something to me, did they do it on purpose then? So it wasn't an accident. Like they did that shit on purpose, right? Which can totally just send us into like a tailspin of judgment and whatever. And the thing is that we start to see the dangers of being in Fight Club and never talking about it. Okay. But this gets us to the part 3. At the end of the day, we are really just over all in our own personal fight club. And none of us realize what the other person is going through because, as we just discussed, rule number one of Fight Club prohibits it. So here's the thing. Maybe, like just maybe, we can try approaching like the whole human experience, being with each other, being in relationship, bumping into each other, trying to figure stuff out, getting married, having babies, getting divorced, like the whole thing, being born into a family, not feeling like you fit in or you belong, like just the whole thing. If you can just think about what it's like maybe to be in other people's shoes and to maybe try on their experiences and what they're going through. And if we just take a look around in the world right now, there's plenty, plenty, plenty of suffering. So if we can just kind of keep in mind as we navigate life that everybody is in their own personal fight club, maybe we can just be a little bit more kind and compassionate. So when a person cuts you off on the highway, you can maybe just think to yourself, rather than going ballistic and losing your mind and flipping them off and then road rage and chasing them down the street. And then people are recording each other with their phones and like just the insanity, right? Maybe we could just pause and say to ourselves, maybe something horrible just happened in their life. Maybe they just got really bad news. Maybe they're late for work, and if they're late to work one more time, they're going to lose their job. Maybe they just found out their kid was sick. Like, who knows? Maybe we could just write a story in their favor, like that they're not a total complete asshole and they weren't trying to ruin your day. They just happened to make a mistake. Like, what if we just allowed some mercy and compassion and possibility that you don't know the whole story and try to write something in their favor and practice maybe a little mini forgiveness, right? A little boop, just a little teeny tiny sprinkle, of forgiveness. Um, and here's the other thing I want to say. If we're all in our own personal fight club, if you're finding yourself in your fight club, like swimming upstream without any help, right? What do they say? Paddling upstream, shit out of luck because you don't have a paddle. You're trying to paddle upstream. Here's the thing. If you're finding yourself feeling anxious or scared or alone or upset or lonely or whatever, there's 1,000 ways we can feel when we feel like I'm having to do this all on my own. Nobody cares about me, whatever. But if we're starting to feel that way, maybe you can reach out to a friend or a family member or somebody you trust and you can tell them, like, hey, I'm having a tough time. Or, hey, this is the way I'm looking at this. Can you maybe help me have a different perspective? Or, hey, can you just listen for a little bit? Or, like, hey, I need some help, right? I'm encouraging you, break the first rule of Fight Club. Talk about it with somebody. Talk about your own personal fight club with somebody, whether it's a therapist or a coach or a mentor or a trusted friend or in a safe community like the Nest or something like that. And again, I always say, I can't tell people that I say safe community because the people in the Nest tell me that they feel like it's a safe community, but I can't make everybody's nervous system think that or believe it. So I say that I try to create a community that feels welcoming and inclusive and safe with people. But it's only people in their nervous systems that can decide that, right? So talk about it with somebody, though, so that you can receive some support. That's the whole thing. Okay. And then I want to kind of wrap it up with this final thought about our own personal fight club, which is this. Um, when we are looking, right? So when we look at the movie Fight Club and we look at, I was just double checking my notes. I want to make sure I didn't forget something here. Oh, interesting. Okay. So when we look at our own personal fight clubs and we put it in the context of the movie and you look at the movie, and if you've never seen the movie, maybe some of this won't make sense to you, but go watch it because it's a killer movie, Fight Club. Um, but if you look at the characters, right, what's really interesting is that the main character is actually an unnamed narrator. So we just know him as the narrator. Even though we see Edward Norton, the actor on screen, like acting, we never learn his name. He's just the unnamed narrator. And I thought this was such a brilliant choice because to me, and I could be wrong, but to me, what it's pointing to is that this is everybody. This is the everyday person, the everyday man, right? This is all of us, right? And any one of us, right? I always say it's the unnamed narrator because it could be any one of us. And what's happening is that Tyler Durden, who is the alter ego, is causing so much trouble. But Tyler Durden, we come to find out, only exists in the narrator's head. So the unnamed narrator and Tyler Durden, who is the unhinged alter ego, the unhinged alter ego only exists in his head. He's not actually real. So it's like this violent, aggressive, right? Like character, this personality aspect, this ego aspect. I always think about Tyler Durden and I'm like, yeah, Brad Pitt, he's lean, he's fighting machine, he looks good in the movie. Like, yeah. But, I'm like, yeah, he's charismatic, but he's also like totally fucking chaotic. He's kind of like devilish. It's almost like this devil role, right? This taunting kind of temptation kind of role. And when I thought about that, like the devil, the devil existing in his head, it brings me right back to something that Marianne Williamson, she has said it like a bunch of times in different ways, on stage and pot, whatever. But I'll never forget when I heard her say it. And she said this. She goes, I told myself, she said, I told myself not to worry about the devil because all that is in your head. She goes, and then I realized, oh my God, that's the worst place it could be. So it's like, oh my God. So we all have this battle that's going on, but so often what we're battling and what we're fighting, right? That internal battle, what we're fighting is ourselves. What we're fighting is our old fears and our old thinking and our old patterns and our old beliefs and our old stories. And we don't talk about it with other people. We're afraid of, like, again, being labeled or being called something, or it's just scary to talk about sometimes. People, their mental health or their, excuse me, their mental health or their well-being or just the quality of their thoughts and stuff like that. It can be scary sometimes. And I think it's in AA or a 12-step program. I know it's in one of the recovery programs. There's this concept that, secrets equal sickness. It's our secrets that make us sick when we don't talk about things. And I've always kind of said to people, we sometimes I said, we got to sometimes look at our minds like a house. And a lot of times we have stuff down in the basement, like it's down in the dark. The lights aren't on. Excuse me, and there's some critters down there and there's some weird noise and some funny smells, right? And it's like we're a little afraid to go down into the basement. But we got to take that stuff out of the darkness and bring it up into the light, up into our awareness, up into sometimes into the therapist room or in the on the coaching call or with the mentor, you know what I mean? Or with a close friend or somebody you trust in your family. And that's the thing. We got to get it out of the basement and we got to put that shit on the front lawn. And I always think about this. Now, I'm not saying go and post all your most front lawn, meaning online, internet, social media. I'm not saying that. Put it on your Substack, whatever. You might put it in your newsletter. I don't know. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about. I'm just saying we got to get stuff out of the basement. We got to put it on our front lawn. Because here's the funny thing. Nobody's going to mention the shit in your basement, the stuff that's going on inside of you. Nobody's going to bring it up and mention it because they don't know it's there. If you are not willing to communicate your feelings, your emotions, your thoughts, your fears, your dreams, all of it, right? People aren't going to know what's going on if they don't know that it's there, that you never give them a clue, you never mention it, you don't talk about things. But you put your stuff out on the lawn, and people are probably going to stop by your yard sale. You know what I mean? You put some of your wares on the lawn and people are probably going to come and check it out. At the very least, they'll be curious and they'll start asking you questions. You know what I mean? So we have to help people. Why do we all want to stay isolated in our own little, fight clubs? If we're all in Fight Club, and that's the thing, you're already in Fight Club. We're all in it. And we could all do a better job about talking about it, about letting ourselves be seen as vulnerable, letting ourselves be seen as not perfect or always having it together, as being clumsy, as fucking up, as falling down, And, when you have good help and good friends and good support, you can fall down a bunch of times and still get back up. I was just listening to a podcast and the guy, he was Rich Roll, and he was talking about recovery and relapses. And I was really fascinated by the way he was talking about relapses. And the thing is that, relapses happen to a huge percentage of people who are in recovery programs. I'm not going to say it's inevitable. It's not my place to say that, but it happens to a lot of people. But if you have some things in place, it makes getting back up a lot easier, getting your mind right, getting some structure, getting back into whether it's that program or a program that you're running with yourself where you have, your own ideas of like, or your own systems in place of helping you to keep your mind right. And I think it's really important that we try to find, if we're in our own personal fight club, that we find the right time and the right place and the right person to talk about it. Somebody who's going to be an unshaming witness, but somebody who's going to be able to really deeply listen, to listen really well, and who knows how to ask good questions. And one of the first questions being, do you want me to just listen? Do you just want my supportive ear? Or do you want help with solutions, right? That's a really big thing. So having an unshaming witness, somebody who will, be there with you as you kind of work out, flesh out, or just share what's going on with you is a really, really, really big deal. And that's one of the great gifts of the Nest, my little mentoring group. And it's small, it's intimate. The people in there are lovely, and it's not a group for like bitching and moaning and whining. I would say hashtag it's not therapy. It is a group of people who, we talk about how when you want to make change in your life, you want to be around a group of people where those changes, those structures, those beliefs, those resources are already in place, where it's already the norm. You want to go to a place where the desired change or behavior is already normalized. It's already happening. It's already in progress. You know what I mean? So if you've been in your own little personal fight club and you want to get out of it, we got to break the first rule. We got to be willing to talk about it. And I think it's one of the most helpful things that we can do. I have seen people be completely unburdened, or at least the very beginning of the healing process of becoming unburdened by talking about things that have been weighing heavy on their heart and their mind. So look, we all might have an alter ego. It's just causing chaos. It might be charismatic. You might like that part of your personality, but we often find that like chaos ensues afterwards. So you guys, I hope this has been helpful in some way, right? Just coming back to the main points here, which is, right? Everybody's going through something and that we know nothing about it. We often know nothing about it because we don't talk about it. So we got to break that rule. And maybe those rules are hard to break or scary to break because of how things were in your family growing up and you weren't allowed to talk about those things. Okay. But you're not being a burden to people who truly love you. If you're trying to share what's on your heart and your mind, you're not going to seem weak. In fact, to me, we forget that what our vulnerability really is our strength, allowing people to see each other as human. There is universal suffering, even in personal details. We think, well, nobody knows, nobody gets it, nobody knows what it's like to be me. The ego wants to make you very special. But trust me, like James Baldwin said, you start to get out there and you meet some people and you read some books and you start to realize we're all going through it. We're all in a slog. We're all in a struggle. You know what I mean? And then here's the thing. Let's try to extend, like go back to the quote itself and just try to extend that quote. I'll give them both to you again. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind always. And then the original, be pitiful or slash be kind, be compassionate. For every man is fighting a hard battle. We're all in it, you guys, and we need each other. And kindness goes a long way. Compassion goes a long way. A good listening ear goes a long way. And just extending love to each other, right? And that's one of the things about this podcast that I really try to do is to just spread a little more love in the world. Sometimes it's not always easy because people are acting crazy out there, but we got to do our best to I always say, be the living example, like be the example. God, the whole, Gandhi quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. So we have to start and we have to be brave and we have to be encouraged. We have to show up with a little more courage and maybe start the conversation and say, hey, I don't know about you, but I've been struggling with some things. And so that way we can talk about Fight Club together, which makes me think, you guys, it's so funny. You may not know this. I wanted to start like, and I do do writing salons. I have had many writing workshops and retreats and things over the years, but I really wanted to start a little group called Write Club instead of Fight Club. And I wanted to say like, and one of the things when I was telling my friends about it, I was like, oh my God, you guys, I just had this idea. I want to call it Write Club. And I was like, but the difference is that the first rule of Write Club is I want you to tell everybody about Write Club. But unfortunately, so many people. Once I Googled it, 'cause I was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna Google it." Oh, da da da. But and a lot of people are using it in different ways. But I love the idea of Right Club, and we're all gonna talk about it. But here's the thing, guys. Thank you for being here. I super duper appreciate you. Wherever you go out into the world, may you leave the animals and the people and the planet and the environment and yourself better than how you found it. Wherever you go, may you and your presence and your love and your energy be a blessing. Bye.